Yo, 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 3 flat tires in a row. Well, everyone, here we are checking in. Obviously coming off a super hot streak, 3 wins, 2 course records, winning by a minimum margin of 2.5 minutes. And our sport's interesting, right? Because you can be there and then it can just, it has a way of it knocks you down, right? And it can knock you down even when you've prepared, when you're ready, and because of no fault of your own. So I want to be here. I want to do this YouTube for 2 reasons. I want to talk about Coeur d'Alene, about what happened, about what I learned, about the maturity I think I showed, and about how I still think I'm demonstrating improvement at the full Ironman distance. And then I want to talk about what August is going to look like, how this maybe made me change my plans or not change my plans. So let's just get right in. The story is, obviously, I went to Coeur d'Alene. Now, this race was kind of fit in the year as what was maybe going to be my only Ironman of the year. Nice was always a big question mark. Okay, am I going to try and qualify for Nice, or am I going to focus on 70.3 Worlds? And so, of course, I was very excited going in as the defending champion. I just quite liked that race. So, you know, I didn't do a super extensive Ironman build, but this was part of the experimentation to see where my training was at, to see if I'm ready for an Ironman, and to confirm a theory that I had, that I was doing actually too much training in the past to get ready for an Ironman. So anyways, at Coeur d'Alene, how the race unfolded is the gun went off and set myself up for another great swim. We saw 2 groups form. We saw a front group with Matthew Marquardt, Justin Metzler, Dylan Gillespie, and Tiago, Tiago, I think, although he then quickly got dropped on the bike. And then it was me, Chris Lieferman, and Adam Fay, and I found that I was conserving a lot of energy on the swim, just really setting myself up for a great rest of the race, going into the race more patient. I noticed the difference between 70.3 racing and Ironman racing is that I really wanted to be thinking conserving energy and being efficient and saving it for that final 10K and saving it for that final 40K on the bike. And so actually the swim, feeling as fresh as I've ever felt, actually way more fresh than I've ever felt in an Ironman, and had a great transition, got on the bike feeling good, hit it through the town, and about 1 mile in, maybe 2 miles into the bike, suddenly I hear both wheels kind of going psh, psh, and of course the white stuff is psh, flying all over, splashing all over me. I actually thought it was the rear wheel because it was kind of coming up in from the back of me on the rear of my leg. So I thought it was the rear wheel. And I'm trying to figure out what happens. It's this moment of chaos and figuring out, of course, my emotion is going really high and I'm panicking and I'm starting to get scared. Like, okay, is this going to be the end of my race right here, or is it going to seal? Because anytime you use tubeless, it's always a chance that it doesn't seal. Now, I've had great success with tubeless, both in training and racing. I would say 90% of the time it seals. So the rear seemed to seal without issue, and the front sort of seemed to seal. And now they've got the motorbike on me, so I'm kind of asking, like, is the rear wheel, because I'm trying to feel which one's which, and they're like, no, the front one's looking really squishy. So I tell them, like, hey, let's get the moto support here. Let's just get a pump. That way, we can pump it up, and sometimes when you have to do these, it keeps squirting a little, and then it seals. So they're like, okay, no problem. We've motoed them. We've called them. They're coming. So I'm trying to remain calm. At this point, I'm riding with Chris Lieferman. He caught up to me, and we go to the turnaround. We see that we've made up already a minute, even throughout all this chaos. And I'm trying to stay positive. At this point, the neutral support comes by in the other direction. We wave them. I wave. The motos wave, like, hey, come help us. But he doesn't see us, so he keeps going. Now, I thought, okay, it would just be a few minutes, but little did I know it would be another hour till they came and got me. So trying to keep my composure, we go through town. I'm really noticing, like, oh God, this tire is flat, because on the corners, I'm having to lean way on the back of my bike. Like, I can't tilt the bike at all, otherwise I can feel it's gonna tip over. So I'm thinking, man, how flat is this wheel? Hopefully it's not leaking anymore. And of course thinking that I'm going to be getting a wheel change any moment. So kind of, anyways, had to settle in for another hour. The power was good, but here's what was really crazy. Now, I don't know if you've ever driven a car with a flat tire or obviously ridden a bike with a flat tire, but the energy you have to expend is so much more to go the same speed because obviously, you're pushing. It's like riding through molasses. And what I noticed is as it was the front tire, I was having to sit way farther back on the bike so that I wasn't like bumping the rim and so that I wouldn't tilt over. And I was just noticing this was taking a lot more energy. My body seemed to be more tense. I think mentally more tense, making sure I didn't fall or crash or, kind of make an issue even worse than it was. And of course, using all the mental energy to wonder what I'm going to do, what's the best strategy to get this changed, when do I stop, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is my race over? And having kind of this panic in a sense, but also using the time to try and stay positive and stay in the race and say, okay, we're going to get this sorted, and getting ready to know that I have to stop. I have to get this thing changed and then carry on. So anyways, riding like that for an hour, you can imagine it's pretty tense. And finally the guy comes, he stops at the top of the hill. We get the pump out, we're pumping it up. And there's this moment of like, okay, it's good, it's sealed, no problems. And then it all starts coming back out again. And we're kind of like, oh, sheesh. So he keeps pumping a little bit. It sort of seals. And at this moment, I'm like, okay, let's keep going. It seems okay. Now, what's crazy, so when I stopped, the tire was at 20 PSI. So I had just ridden 30 miles at 20 PSI on the front tire. That's essentially a flat tire, a completely flat tire. It's amazing I was able to stay on the bike. So I hop back on. That cost me about 2 minutes. And keep rolling, trying to stay positive. But every few minutes, it's like spewing out. And I'm like, oh God, this is just a matter of time before it's totally flat again. So we come to the far turnaround now, and I see that I'm still only 430 back. I'm the same margin back that I was when I exited the water, despite all of this. And I'm like, okay, things are actually looking good. I'm still only 430 back. Let's just kind of stop. So the guy comes in, I'm like, hey, he's like, I can put a tube in 2 minutes. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, stop at the top. He's like, I got to get ready. I'm like, stop at the top of a climb and have everything ready. He's like, it only takes me 2 minutes. So kind of keep working. Now, what is interesting is at this point, I'm actually noticing like muscles that I haven't felt in my body before because of how I'm having to ride the bike. And I can tell you after the fact, like my ankles were more sore than I've ever been, and I only rode 56 miles. So something about how I was having to ride the bike with this flat tire was using different muscular recruitment than I've ever seen. So anyways, we stop. Now he does a great job changing it super fast. I think a lot of us saw it on camera. Maybe I'll even have it on here. And at this moment, I'm like super positive. I suddenly hop on the bike. Now I feel like I went from like a 1940s Ford to like a modern day Formula One car. Like suddenly the watts and the power, it's just like I'm accelerating, and I'm like all of a sudden, like after fighting these mental lows and wondering if I'm going to finish and wondering what the best strategy is and being scared I'm going to crash and all of this, suddenly I'm like, my race is back on track. Like even though I'm maybe 6 minutes down at this point, I'm like, I'm back on track, 7 minutes down, right? Because it took 2 minutes, but suddenly I'm flying and I'm feeling good, and I'm like, I am 100% in this race. Anything is still possible. And that's what was tough about this, because then the front went flat again, and this time with the tube in, it doesn't hold any air, so it was some slow leak, so it just started to get flatter and flatter and flatter. And at this point, I'm like, what do I do? The wheel support's now gone. Obviously, they got to go check out what's going on at the front of the race, see if anyone else needs attention. And with about 3 miles left, I was actually just riding on the rim. I had to completely let up, just basically pedal the bike. And what's crazy, pulled into transition. And looking back at the tracker, I was still only like 5 minutes back. So throughout all of this, I had only lost 20 seconds. And of course, the big question is like, why not just change a wheel, right? Just change a wheel. Well, I would have loved to change the wheel, right? You just basically pop the wheel out, throw in another wheel, something like you see in the Tour de France, and on your way in 30 seconds. But wheel support, they only had rim brake bikes, so there were no options for the pros. basically every professional I know at this point, except for you, Jason Pohl. You are on the old school rim bike, and I guess Gustav Eden, I think he's still on the Giant. Other than those two guys, I don't know any other professional on a rim brake bike, and so there was no option. So basically, had to pack my bags and get out of there. And of course, I just want to say, like, I was having a great duel with Chris Lieferman, and he ended up executing a fantastic race. It was such a marvelous story. I was on the flight with him. He had his baby his baby came the day before he flew out, and so he confirmed that you can have a great race right after your baby's due. And just really want to give my hats off to him, as well as Matthew Marquardt. What a great race. Only his second pro race and smashing it. And then Justin Messler on the podium. I know he dedicated so much to this, and so it was really, really great to see these guys execute the race they wanted. And now for me, what do I think I learned from this race? I still think I learned a lot from this race. Here's why. Because I think if we look back at St. George penalty last year, if we look back at the composure I've sometimes had at races, like I'm angry, I'm pissed off, I'm this hot rod just waiting to explode. I'm a firework waiting to explode, and bah, and this time it's like I raced with composure and I raced with calmness, and this is something like I would be proud of how I did this. And even Lars said to me, like, wow, you're going to really show your kid like a great way to live life and a great way to bounce back and a great way to be strong and be patient through adversity. And yeah, so I think I made progress. I think my swim was a big step forward in the right direction. The thing I'm really upset about is because I've been working really, really hard on my fat burning and my nutrition plan for this. And so I did quickly want to talk about it as I wanted to document it. So Ketone IQ, you guys know I keep talking about these, but this is the main reason I've been taking them, is to see where I was at in the full Ironman. I had one in the morning, and then what I did for my nutrition plan was I actually put the gels in the bottle. So I started with, 3 bottles. The 2 bottles like this each had 3 gels and a shot of ketones. And I was really thinking, okay, this is going to keep my energy better. And then my big Aero bottle actually had 5 gels plus the ketones. So I was going to take 3 ketone servings. That's already 1,100 calories. It's all carbohydrate, so I actually can sort of talk carbs and calories because the conversion is just 4 to 1 because I'm not taking in anything other than carbs. And then I was doing my chews in the bento box with 4 packs of these. And so I was taking in nutrition really well. My stomach was feeling really well, and I was just feeling really strong and really, I wasn't attached to a performance at this race. I was more attached to the process and seeing where I was at and seeing where my improvement was at. And the fact that I don't quite get to see that is what's the hardest for me to let go of. So I'm trying to see the positives, like in that the swim and that I was more patient and like, yeah, normally I'm racing in these races and it's like I'm so, like, I was actually backing my run and I was showing that in my actions and in my belief and in my mindset this whole time. And that would have been the first Ironman I've ever backed my run, and I would have loved to see what would have happened. But anyways, I've often come on here and I've preached that I'm a believer of the Stoic philosophy. And so if you can't control it, then you can't let it affect you. And this has been a great testament to that. I have to carry forward. I have to keep moving on. And so here's the plan for the rest of the year. This is 2023 Sam, self-coach Sam, is actually, I'm not going to jump into Lake Placid. Lake Placid would be a foolish man's move for me at this point. I mean, it's tempting, don't get me wrong, right? It's a tempting carrot to chase that carrot in front of me and say, like, okay, I want my redemption and I want to prove myself at the Ironman, but I have to keep the bigger picture in mind. So here's the bigger picture of the year, is focusing on Milwaukee, and then I'm going to go to Singapore. Both of those are the PTO majors, and then I'm going to go to 70.3 Worlds. And so I've got 3 big middle distance races within 3 weeks. And get this, Milwaukee is August 4th, and my baby is due August 2nd. So that's a little bit of a question mark. Of course, I'm going to fill in on the process. My plan is that if the baby comes early or on time, I'm going to be ready and I'm going to go. But I am very clear in this. I am not going to miss my baby's birth. So if the baby hasn't come, and it's looking like labor is going to happen right away, then I'm going to have to miss Milwaukee, and I'm just going to have to keep training, and I'm going to have to double down on Singapore and 70.3 Worlds. And this has been the vision of the whole year, right? This has been the vision of the whole year. If you looked at what I did last year, I traveled way too much. I went down to Chile, and then I I wanted to go have a little European summer, baby. And I went and I spent 10 weeks in Europe. And it was a fun time. Of course, I got to challenge myself. I got to race the Europeans, which everyone's all about racing the Europeans. And I agree, that's the right move. But at the same time, last summer, I was also told I was dodging the American field. So in my position, you can really sort of never please everyone. But anyways, I digress. The point is that this year was about minimizing travel so that I could keep training, so that I could prepare, and that I could essentially have my travel coins spent, like saved up in the bank, so that I can spend it on Singapore and I can spend it on 70.3 Worlds, and so that I can be ready and fired up there. And so I'm sticking with that plan. I'm excited about it. And that's maybe the remainder of the year. After that, we'll see what else comes. I just want to focus my full intent on the birth of my baby and those 3 races, which might be 2 races. So that's what's going on. Of course, back in Tucson, nothing says being like Tucson. It's 7 in the morning and it's already 80 plus degrees here. So I hope you enjoyed this recap. I hope I could kind of teach you guys something. Yeah, it was still great to go and be in Coeur d'Alene, to race there, to line up on a start line. I even said, like, to Laura the morning of, because obviously Mont Tremblant was canceled and I was watching the finish line of Roth, and I'm like, I am just grateful to be racing and then taken out. But, you know, still starting a race is better than not starting a race, and bad luck happens in the sport. And if you've had bad luck in your life, just get up and keep carrying on. So cheers and yo, yo, yo. Thanks, everyone.